Chapter 3. The case study is about a border clash between San Diego and Tijuana. And Tijuana has serious sewage problems. If you've ever been to Mexico, you notice that their sewage systems, especially in Tijuana, are pretty poor. They don't treat their sewage, and it can run into the ocean, and then currents can take it to San Diego beaches. And so that's an international border problem. And these kinds of border problems can also happen in all other places. For example, we burn a lot of coal in the eastern United States, and that coal produces something called sulfur dioxide, which turns to sulfuric acid in the atmosphere, which is acid rain. And then it blows into Canada, and it rains acid rain on their forests. So they're mad at us for that. So it, kind of goes both ways. Different countries' pollution can affect another country's. Make sure you know what a watershed is. A very, very important term that we will use all year. And that is basically all the water which drains into a river. So wherever a drop of rain hits in this area, it all will drain into the Tijuana River. Make sure on page 60 you know the term environmental policy. And these policies prevent resource depletion. It also prevents tragedy of the commons. On page 61, we talk about policy that helps prevent certain pathogens in untreated sewage. Make sure you know what these pathogens are. So the first one we have is cholera, which is a bacteria which causes diarrhea. In fact, they all cause diarrhea. The second water pathogen to know is Giardia, which is found in our local rivers and streams. And that's why if you go hiking or backpacking, you don't drink the water from a stream unless you filter it first. You do need to know, I did put here bacteria in parentheses, but they're important. Cholera, let's back up. Cholera is not a problem in the U.S. It's a problem in some developing countries. Poor countries, they still have cholera outbreaks, places like India. But in the U.S., it's completely gone. And we used to have more cholera outbreaks in the wagon train times in the 1800s, but we've eliminated cholera from the U.S. You need to know what cholera is. You need to know it's a bacteria. You need to know Giardia is found in the U.S. in rivers and streams. It is a protozoa. A protozoa is a one-celled critter like bacteria, except a protozoa is a eukaryote and a bacteria is a prokaryote. So this is a eukaryote single-celled organism. And then you need to know about Cryptosporidium. This was discovered a couple of decades ago, and it has a hard shell, and so we have to do special water treatment to our water in the U.S. We have to zap our water with ozone or UV light to break down the hard shell. Going on to page 66. There's not a whole lot in this chapter either, just sticky note. All right, the first wave of environmental policy. We had westward expansion in the 1800s, and we thought at that time that Western land was infinite, and we wanted to conquer nature. So when we're talking about policy here, we're talking about bad policy. Policy can be good or policy can be bad. Environmental policy just said conquer nature, it's infinite, we'll never harm it too much, go settle the land. And so we did in huge numbers. We did it through the Homestead Act, which basically gave people 160 acres if they could live on it for 7 years. And also the Mineral Lands Act. The Mineral Land Act is still in effect to this day. And basically you can mine and get minerals and you didn't have to protect the environment for certain minerals. Now we've altered that law for a lot of things like coal and uranium, but for a lot of minerals it still falls under the Mineral Lands Act. So that was the first wave, and that was pretty much bad policy harming the environment. Then we go to the second wave, where we realized at about 1900 with John Muir, Teddy Roosevelt, Emerson, Thoreau, that we kind of hurt the environment a lot, and we now need to fix it. So we set aside national parks. This was the time of Teddy Roosevelt. We set aside wildlife refuges and forest reserves to try and preserve what land we did not homestead out. And that's why the Western United States has huge amounts of publicly owned land, because at the point when we were settling, we realized let's preserve land, and so we did at that point in time. The third wave of environmental protection is our modern wave. It started in about the 1960s into the 70s. Rachel Carson was a huge figure in that. She wrote a book called Silent Spring, which was about the effects of pesticide, especially DDT, and helped change environmental policy for the better. We realized that we had a lot of pollution, and we realized that we needed to fix the pollution and protect species in this modern, and we're still in the modern environmental movement. Page 68, part of what was going on to create this modern environmental movement was we had so much pollution that we had things like rivers catching on fire. In the 1950s and 60s, the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught on fire a lot, like repeatedly, because there's so much oil and other flammable chemicals in the water that it would just catch on fire. It was crazy. The chemicals would be on top of the water and they'd catch on fire. And so we realized we needed some strict laws to help protect us. And so the Clean Water Act came in at that time, Clean Air Act. All right, NEPA is a law that basically says any project funded by the U.S. government, building a road, a dam, whatever it is, you have to do an environmental impact statement for that project. And so make sure you know what NEPA is, and you need to know its provisions. Basically, a provision is what does the law say. Now, the EPA is not EPA, it's the EPA, and this is not a law, it's an agency, the Environmental Protection Agency. So for your test, make sure you know the role of the Environmental Protection Agency. Going on to page 71. So make sure you know what a subsidy is. It's where the government gives cash or a tax credit or a resource, a free resource or a tax deduction to a corporation or a person for economic gain. The government wants to influence the economy in different ways. Some examples of subsidized things that we have are gasoline. We give subsidies to the oil companies and to drill for oil and provide jobs, which means that our gasoline from the oil is a little bit cheaper. Doesn't seem that way, but it is. We give farmers money to grow corn, wheat, and soy. We subsidize coal for energy to make coal a little bit cheaper for people. We build roads for the logging industry for free, and so the logging companies don't have to build those roads to get in there. And what happens with the subsidy is that it makes products artificially cheap. So actually, these food products are cheaper than they should be, but are they really because our taxes are high? So we're just sort of shifting the money. We pay more in taxes, but then the taxes subsidize things. And so it makes things look cheaper than they really are because tax money pays for a part. But where does tax money come from? You and I. So we really are paying for these things just inadvertently. Page 73, we have something called cap and trade, which we sometimes call marketable emissions permits, but the nickname is called cap and trade, and the AP test is fine with that. So, for example, if you're a company and you're given 10 units of pollution, but you only use 5 units of air pollution or water pollution, you can sell the extra 5 or trade the extra 5 with another company whose plant maybe pollutes 15 units of pollution, and they're only given 10, so they need to buy another 5 from another company, and so you could sell them or trade them. That's what cap and trade is. Going on to That's it. That's all you need to sticky note and all you need to know for Chapter 3.